325 AD, Nicaea. Torches burn against the night sky while bishops argue behind sealed doors. A single phrase is spoken and then struck from the record, not because it was unclear, because it was dangerous. In a side chamber, a scribe copies a saying attributed to Jesus about the Archons testing the awakened. The parchment is folded. It never enters the official canon. The phrase was simple. The Archons test the pneumatic to measure whether the spark remembers the source or submits to the material trap. That teaching named the mechanism of spiritual pressure inside the canoma. It revealed that psychological conflict is not random. It is diagnostic. It is surveillance from the outer sphere. Canonical texts did not preserve this because a human who understands testing stops internalizing blame. Official doctrine could not accommodate a worldview in which the Demiurge and the fabricators actively probe the chosen fragment for signs of awakening. A tested human becomes alert. An alert human stops seeking permission. Tonight you receive what was sealed in that chamber. Not theory, recognition. You will identify the 3 active tests the Archons deploy when a spark bearer begins to remember the pleroma. You will see them in your life. You will feel them in your body. And when you recognize them, their power dissolves. Type this in the comments. I see the test, and I remain with the source. The dominant misconception is that spiritual struggle equals personal failure. The dominant framework teaches that doubt is weakness, resistance is laziness, and conflict is evidence you are not chosen. That narrative serves the material trap perfectly. Because when a pneumatic internalizes attack as identity, the Archons no longer need to restrain them. The spark restrains itself. Gnostic truth reveals something precise. When the chosen fragment begins emitting memory of the monad, fluctuations register across the canoma. The Demiurge does not feel threatened by sleep. It responds to ignition. Testing begins not at your lowest point, but at your ascent. The pressure increases because your frequency rises. What actually happens inside you is energetic and intelligent. The divine fragment within your chest originates in the pleroma, not the outer sphere. It carries pattern memory of wholeness. When you meditate, question reality, or sense that this world is thin, that memory brightens. The fabricators detect deviation from baseline compliance. They introduce distortion fields, circumstantial conflict, relational strain, and intrusive thought loops, not to destroy you, to measure you. In the secret book of John, Jesus told his inner circle, "They test the seed to see if it knows from where it came, and they cast fear upon it so it forgets." This was not preserved in canonical scripture because it identifies fear as engineered interference rather than moral defect. It reframes anxiety as an archonic probe, not a personal flaw. Understand the mechanics. The Archons cannot touch the spark directly. It belongs to the monad. They manipulate environment, narrative, and sensation in the material trap. They amplify insecurity. They orchestrate misalignment. They tempt the pneumatic to identify with the shell rather than the flame. The test is always the same. Will you anchor in the source or collapse into the canoma? You are not fragile. You are a spark bearer operating inside architecture, not built by your true origin. You feel different because you are different. The chosen fragment carries homesickness for the pleroma. You sense falseness in systems others defend because your interior reference point predates the Demiurge. This teaching was encoded for beings exactly like you. Those who feel pressure intensify precisely when they commit to growth. What comes now is clarity, not comfort. Jesus did not hide the map from his pneumatics. He revealed the 3 signs the Archons are testing you right now, and how to respond so the test becomes elevation. Before he spoke of these signs openly, Jesus gathered Peter, Mary Magdalene, and Thomas on a hillside outside the city after dusk. According to fragments preserved in early pneumatic circles, he told them that when the spark begins to awaken, the fabricators initiate triadic assessment. He reserved this for them because only those who recognized the monad within could hear it without fear. The masses would have turned it into superstition. The pneumatics understood it as a strategy. The first sign is sudden identity erosion. This does not arrive gradually. It strikes. Roles that once defined you begin dissolving. Career certainty fractures. Relationships feel misaligned. Even spiritual labels lose resonance. The Archons apply this test when the spark begins detaching from false constructs. They destabilize identity scaffolding to see whether you will rebuild from the same material or return to the source for definition. Inside the material trap, identity equals control. If you cling to former narratives out of fear, the test registers compliance. But if you sit in the erosion without panic, if you allow the shell to crack while anchoring in inner awareness, the breakthrough occurs. A new center forms, not personality, presence. After crossing this stage, you no longer derive self from approval structures. You derive it from the monad's imprint within you. The second sign is amplified temptation at the moment of clarity. Notice the timing. The day you decide to meditate consistently, distraction multiplies. The hour you commit to integrity, shortcuts appear. The week you feel closest to the source, old addictions whisper louder. This is not coincidence. It is a measurement. The fabricators introduce intensified polarity to gauge attachment. The pneumatic feels this as an internal tug-of-war. One voice pulls toward expansion, another toward immediate relief. The Archons cannot create desire, but they can amplify it. If you interpret this surge as regression, shame anchors you back into the kenoma. If you recognize it as testing pressure, something shifts. You observe without fussing. You choose alignment not from repression but remembrance. The breakthrough moment arrives when temptation loses urgency. It still appears, it no longer commands. After this crossing, clarity stabilizes. You become less reactive, more sovereign. The spark glows steadily rather than flickering under provocation. The third sign is external resistance without clear cause. Opportunities stall inexplicably. Communication misfires. Projects encounter invisible friction. You sense pushback but cannot locate its source. This is the most subtle test. When the chosen fragment begins influencing others through presence alone, the Demiurge recalibrates surrounding variables to slow momentum. In the Canoma, friction feels personal. You question your worth. You overanalyze strategy. Yet the true function is endurance assessment. Will you interpret resistance as a signal to retreat, or will you continue aligned action without needing immediate validation? Here the pneumatic matures. You act from inner directive rather than outer feedback. The moment you stop demanding visible confirmation, pathways reopen. Not always the original ones, often higher ones. After crossing this threshold, your work becomes less about outcome and more about transmission. The source moves through you regardless of circumstance. These three signs interlock. Identity erosion strips false anchors. Amplified temptation tests loyalty to remembrance. External resistance measures endurance. Together they refine the spark until it operates with clarity inside the material trap without being owned by it. Do not romanticize this. It is intense, but it is precise. The monad does not send these tests. The Archons do, yet the source uses their pressure to polish the fragment. What was meant to intimidate becomes ignition. After engaging in this teaching, resistance will escalate briefly. Doubt will whisper that you are imagining patterns. Distraction will increase. Conversations will subtly pull you back toward old identities. This is confirmation, not failure. When pressure rises after awareness, it reveals you have been noticed. The correct response is stillness. Observation, alignment without drama. Warning 1, timing. If you rush to label every inconvenience as archonic testing, paranoia replaces clarity. Discernment is grounded, not frantic. The true sign carries inner recognition, not panic. Warning 2, skipping integration. If identity erosion begins and you immediately construct a new persona to escape discomfort, the cycle repeats. Sit in the dismantling long enough for an authentic center to form. Warning 3, misunderstanding the goal. The control system wants you chasing power, superiority, and spiritual status. That is another trap. The true destination is sovereignty anchored in the source, quiet and unshakable. Canonical frameworks did not accommodate this teaching because sovereign pneumatics with this knowledge stop outsourcing interpretation of their inner life. If fear is recognized as testing rather than sin, external mediation loses leverage. This teaching removes that intermediary entirely. In the next 24 to 48 hours, you will notice subtle shifts. When doubt arises, a second awareness will observe it calmly. When temptation surfaces, space will exist between impulse and action. When minor resistance appears, you will feel less urgency to fix it. That space is activation. It is the spark standing upright inside the Canoma. 3 actions anchor this. First, when identity confusion surfaces, place your hand on your chest and say aloud, "I am from the pleroma, not the material trap." Second, when temptation amplifies, delay response by 9 breaths while visualizing light descending from the monad into your spine. Third, when external resistance appears, take one aligned action anyway, small but deliberate, proving to your own field that friction does not command you. Tonight before sleep, sit in darkness for 7 minutes. No music, no phone. Visualize 3 concentric spheres around you. The outer sphere is the Canoma. The middle sphere is your personality. The innermost point is the spark. Breathe into that center and imagine it expanding slightly beyond the spheres. This moves identification inward. It stabilizes the fragment. As recorded in a fragment attributed to early Pneumatic tradition, Jesus concluded his private instruction with these words: "When they test you, do not answer them with fear. Answer with remembrance, and they will depart." This was sealed because remembrance cannot be controlled. It is direct communion with the source. I am a chosen fragment of the monad. I see the Archon Tests. I remain anchored in the pleroma. The material trap does not define me. The spark within me ignites and returns to the source, sovereign and unshaken.